get straight to it. I didn't film an intro. We're making McCall's 4249 View A, the long maxi with the ruffle. First thing I do when I'm grading any pattern is I pull out the instructions and I look through all of the pattern pieces I'm going to need along with the fabric requirements. I grab a separate piece of paper and I write down every single pattern piece I will need to trace, cut, alter, etc. This one had a lot of pieces. I think we're at 15 pieces total. I ended up not tracing all of them. Some of them, especially for like the ruffle and the tie, I just measured them out and then wrote them down, especially if they're just rectangles. And then the pattern pieces that will need the most alterations are the front bodice pieces. So you'll see me labeling piece 1, piece 3, and piece 7 as FBA. 7 is the back, but it will be impacted by the FBA that I will need to do on the front pieces. And this McCall's 4249 is a size 16, so it's a bust size 38. So let's see, so size 38. My bust measurements are 44, and my front is 3 inches larger subtracted from the total circumference, which puts it 3-inch grade. So I need to grade the pattern 3 inches all the way around. And I use easy pattern paper from Pellon. I buy it when it goes on sale at Joann's. Here I am using just washers, and some of them are covered in washi tape. And I trace my patterns using colored pencils and my Dritz curve ruler. I use colored pencils instead of pen because I find that I get ink everywhere, and you can see ink on the grid behind me from where I used to use ink. And right here I am just tracing around the outside cutting line and tracing the stitch line. And what I love about these 1970s patterns is that the seam line is already marked on there. I don't have to go back in and try to measure it and trace it. And here I'm adding all of the lace insert lines per the pattern piece, just marking everything that I will need. And I do this for all of my pattern pieces, just using the same pieces of paper, same Pellon paper, same colored pencil, making sure to get the grain line, the notches, pretty much a carbon copy of what's on the pattern piece. And then on the front, I do add an apex, which isn't clear on the pattern piece, and I usually add about 3/4 of an inch above the front bust. So here I am trying to calculate how much I need to grade each piece. So that's 1.5 inch per, so front and back. And then if I do 2 points of grading in each piece, that would be 3/8 of an inch twice. So here I am making the line to make sure that wherever I add a grading isn't impacting any major design lines or darts, or isn't getting caught up in too many seam lines. So I'm trying to avoid that seam line where it connects the inset and the shoulder, and I am adding it to the bib. And I find if I just trace a 3/8 inch on a separate piece of paper and then I just cut, it works so much faster than adding the piece of paper and then tracing the 3/8. So this works really well for me. And so that's what I'm doing right there, is just adding the 3/8. And here I am cutting along those lines that I created previously. And now all I need to do is line up the two sides to that 3/8 inch lines that I created on that separate piece of paper. And you're going to see me go through tons of tape, like a lot of tape. I think I went through 2 rolls of tape in doing all of these pattern alterations. It's a lot of tape. And I just try to kind of tape all of the spots that I know will be moved around a lot. And here I am cleaning up all of those alterations. So you can see I added the other 3/8 of an inch, and I'm just cutting all of the excess to make it a little bit less messy, especially at the bottom where it's going to intersect near the dart. Okay, all done. Doesn't look too bad yet. And here I need to match up with the front inset with the grade line I created on the front. So I had to tilt it a little bit. And now I will kind of line up all of my grain lines. And that's one thing good about using the grid cutting, is that you can make sure that everything is aligned when you're doing these alterations. So here I am, I matched up the shoulder line to make sure that the 3/8 kind of column that I'm making will match up when I cut apart that inset. So again, I'm using the lines on the grid, 3/8, line it up, and then line again, and then all I have to do is cut this down and then match up where the lines are. and more tape. This is actually one of my favorite parts of using vintage, is that I have to grade and kind of do the math. When I first started doing this, it was a little intimidating, but I actually enjoy it a lot now. Unfortunately, when you've got, like 15 pattern pieces and you have to trace all of them, because I am team trace, it takes a lot of time. So it takes probably 3 times longer to do the pattern alterations and the tracing and the trimming than it does to cut out the actual fabric. And cutting the fabric is the one thing that I really don't like to do sewing wise. So here I'm matching up the grain line, and I will be marking a 3/8 line around the back neck edge, making sure that I've got every line parallel so I don't mess with the way the fabric will hang once I sew it up, trying to avoid the dart. And then I'm going back here, going through the shoulder line, making sure I don't get into any of the seam lines in the arm's eye or in the dart or where the seams will interconnect. There we go. So now all 3 front pieces have been graded, and so I have increased the length around the circumference by 1.5 inches. However, it is still the same length of the original size. So I have just found over time that if I add 3/8 to the upper bust on these vintage patterns, that usually is enough for me to compensate for the size difference. So again, I'm making those straight lines and making sure that the lines match up among all 3 of the pieces, and I'll be cutting these open and adding the 3/8 inch just like I did. Here I'm lining up the front to the back, marking that line that I will be cutting across to add the 3/8 to the length of all 3 of these pattern pieces. And you may find that you have to add more length. This just works for me. I am kind of short-waisted, so this is probably why I don't have to add too much. But again, muslins are really, really important, especially when you're just hacking the pattern apart like I do. So all 3 pieces have been graded. Now I need to do the full bust adjustment. So right here, I am lining up the side to the apex, and then I am lining through the middle of the dart, and you're going to see me use gratuitous amount of tape. So I am taping where I did all the grading to make sure that when I cut it open, it doesn't flop around. I am reinforcing the apex. I'm going to be reinforcing the dart, and you can see here I'm kind of doubting myself because I don't have my alterations book open. So I think I know what I'm doing, and here I am kind of measuring. I'll be adding an 1.5 inches because I needed a 3-inch full bust 3-inch full bust adjustment. So here I am just cutting that 1.5 inches, and then I will be, again, more tape. Never too much tape when you're doing pattern alterations. And I'm cutting up through the apex to the side seam and stopping at that seam allowance, just like I did on the other side, and that'll give me a little hinge where I can spread this. So I am taping one side of the dart to that 1.5 inches that I created on that extra piece of paper. And then here I'm trying to figure out exactly what I need to do because, again, I don't have my book open. And then I remember I do need to cut the front to make up more of that volume. So I've added a line here, and then I will cut that down. And then again, I start doubting myself on what exactly am I doing. And then I remember I need to keep the grain line straight. So I've added a separate piece of paper with straight lines that I can then kind of fudge that lower half. And I will put some links down to some great FBAs. I had tried to use Megan Nielsen's walkthrough on how to split darts, and I thought I remembered how to do it, which is probably why I've lost a lot of my kind of faith in what I'm doing here. You can see I keep shifting and not quite sure what I'm doing, using a lot of tape, double checking everything. All I needed to do was bring up a book or bring up the blog, but no, I just kept spiraling and confusing myself. So don't be me. And I gave up. 2 weeks later, nail polish has changed. I have watched Closet Historian on how she does dart manipulation so much easier. So all she does is make a line on where you want the other dart to stop, and then you just cut through, and then you can just pivot to split the dart in half. So much easier than what I was trying to do. I don't even know what I was trying to do. I think I was just relying on bad memory on Megan Nielsen's walkthrough. So here I've just split the dart. It's so much easier than all that measuring I was trying to do. I need to slide an extra piece of tissue paper underneath and more tape. And these dart legs go all the way up to the apex, so I need to drop them down. So I drop them down an inch. So I'm going an inch down to the middle of those darts and just bringing them down to the edge. And I've switched colored pencil. Yeah, black definitely shows up better than blue. I will use black from now on. Let me know if you have any trouble seeing everything. I did get a new setup. I've got a better overhead, so hopefully that helps make everything a little bit more visible and less confusing. I'm still trying to work on improving my setup. And this is still a hobby, so it's just, I'm trying to film when I can and hopefully provide some valuable information to everyone. Oh my gosh. So I'm done. They're just a mess. So I'm going through and I'm walking the seams. Now this is super important. I am overlapping the seams. You see right here, I've got, oh look, everything lines up perfect. And that shouldn't happen because I have an extra 3/8. And then I realize, there's a 3/8 dart. So once I close this dart, add some tape to close it. You can see when I lay everything over again, the back neckline is too short. So I need to push out that back neckline. So I'm just adding an extra tiny piece of paper because I have tiny pieces of paper everywhere whenever I do pattern alterations. And I will overlap these seams again and then just kind of add that additional fabric to the back that I need. And whenever you do this, try to add 90-degree angles so that your seams can connect. Anytime you have less than 90 degrees, it's not a good seam, and you're going to end up with kind of like a wonky end at the end. There we go. So now I'm matching everything up. You can see I've got the 3/8 all the way through, but that's going to impact my arm's eye. So I have added 3/8 to the sleeve to make up for it. And that's going to be all gathered up. Right, and so I have cleaned up all of my tracings, so it's a little less confusing when I cut everything out. So that is the front, the back, the inset, the cuff, the sleeve, and the collar, which also had that 3/8 added. And here's a muslin. Before I make any alterations to the skirt, I wanted to make sure that the top part fit. And to get a good clean inset, I have clipped the front bodice and eased the inset into it so you can see all those little clips. It ended up not being necessary on the full version I made, but it worked well for the foil. And you can see I just have one of the collars. I don't have the under collar, and I did not use facings. And I've eased in the collar, it eased in the sleeve. It's very, very full. You can see that. And then the cuff, it was kind of a little bit too long for my muslin. If you can see that little crease from where I ironed it. And I had lengthened my sleeve an inch, and that wasn't necessary. So I actually took that lengthening off when I made the real version. I basted in the zipper to make sure it can fit. I've never had good luck doing muslins without a zipper. Pinning it just doesn't work for me, so I always just baste in the zipper. It saves me so much time. You can see here where that inch was added, and it kind of causes the sleeve to bunch up a little bit. I thought it was a little bit too loose when I was trying this on, but I think it worked really well. So here I am. I know the muslin is going to work, so the pattern pieces I did will work. I am now overlapping the seams to see what alterations I will need to do for the slip, or for the skirt. So I'm closing all of the darts, overlapping the seams, and you can see that the top is a little bit larger than the skirt by 3/4, which is what the grading rule was when I did the math. So here I am marking the 3/4 and just a straight line. Going forward, I think what I would do is I would add 3/4 all the way down. I thought making the lines like I did on the top part would save me some time with the skirt, but I honestly needed some more curve to my skirt. I should have probably eased it out a little bit more. And my hips are larger than the grade rule for the pattern. so I probably should have added a little bit more than the 3/4 here. I thought that it would have enough ease to make up for it because it is such a flowy dress, but I kind of overestimated the amount of ease. I needed a little bit more room. So here I am, just adding some paper and tapering from the bottom up. I didn't want it to be too full, and I find that as you grade, you don't need to add tons of fullness on the bottom of the skirt. It's mainly around your hip and your waist, so that's why I tapered close to nothing, about maybe 2/3 of the way down, because I didn't want to have a whole bunch of fullness at the bottom, because then it would eat up a whole bunch of my fabric. And even though I had a lot of this fabric, I used up most of it. I think I have less than a yard left. I think I had 5 or 6 yards, so it did eat up a lot of fabric. So here I am overlapping the back piece to the front side piece. I didn't make any alterations to the front center piece, and I'm just matching up the pieces of paper to where I did the alterations in the front to make sure that I've got enough to do the full tapering and more tape. You can never have enough tape when you're doing pattern alterations. Flipping it over and just tracing to make sure that everything lines up. We got a good 90-degree angle at the top, then just slowly tapering down. That's why using the grid, it really helps for pattern drafting, because you've got tons of straight lines that you can just build off of. Here I am just tapering, making sure that my notches will line up once I add them. And that's one thing when you trace, you have to make sure that you copy everything over. I know a lot of people don't like tracing. You have to for vintage patterns because, well, especially I have to because I just butcher them. But if it's a PDF or something, I just send it to PDF plotting and I just cut it out. And if it's also, less than maybe 10 pieces, I might trace. I don't know. It depends. Depends on my mood. Sometimes I cut it out, sometimes I trace. But if there's more than 10 pieces, I don't have time for that. I do enough alterations already. I don't need to waste more time tracing. All right, so the skirt pieces are all done and I didn't make any changes to the bottom.
Here she is on a mannequin. I love this dress. It took a lot longer than I thought it would, but I will walk through kind of the different techniques I used to create this dress. Now, the 2 fabrics I used are a polyester chiffon, and then I also underlined the main portion of the dress and the collar in cotton voile. So the collar, if you noticed on the mock-up that I did, the collar kind of stuck out a little bit at the top. So what I did is I actually pinched out probably 3/8 at the top to nothing on the side, and that just makes it lay a little bit flatter against my neck. And then this bib portion, it is underlined in voile with the chiffon, basted on top before I did any of the seams, along with the lace. So the pattern asks for 1 3/4 inch wide lace, and I didn't have enough yardage in that width to do the entire dress. So this is actually 1 inch wide flat lace overlapped with one another, and this is where I just zigzagged them together to create the width that the pattern requested. This lace here is just a single layer. That's the 1 inch wide lace, and it's gathered and inserted in between the front piece. Now the front piece is underlined with the voile as well, and I basted the dart legs together so the voile and the chiffon were on top of each other, and I basted them at the dart line, and then I just stitched this really slowly to make sure I didn't have shifting on all 4 of these darts, because the basic pattern comes with 2 darts, and I did 4 because I had such a big full bust adjustment that I discovered that if I don't split the darts, it looks really pointy, and if I try to gather it, it doesn't look right. So the collar is underlined both on the inside and the outside, and it is interfaced on the outside, so it is a little bit stiff. And then at the top, what I should have done is I did not really clip this seam too well, so it does kind of feel a little bit tight when I wear it, but I'd rather have it a little bit tight than too loose and gaping open, but this would probably be uncomfortable for some folks. The back is also underlined with the same techniques I used in the front, with basting the voile and the chiffon together and then stitching the darts. The sleeves are fully sheer. The pattern had done some lace work, I think like 3 pieces of lace to mirror the bib, and I had intended on doing that. I forgot, and then once I put it together, I thought it might have been a little bit much to have the lace here and here. The cuff is again the 1-inch lace overlapped and stitched, and then I just have the 1-inch lace on its own at the bottom and at the top of the cuff. Yeah, I did not underline the inside layer. I wonder why. Probably because it was already pretty heavy. This one I did. Maybe because I just thought the collar needed a little bit extra stiffness. I don't know, but it worked. And then the top layer and the lining layer are separate. So these seams do not interconnect beyond the waist seam. And I kind of cheated a little bit, and I probably shouldn't have, but what I did is I copied the back 2 skirt pieces to the front and just cut it on a fold, so I wouldn't have to worry about all the piecing, and I kind of just fudged where it connects with the waistband. It works. And you saw the alterations I did with the skirt where I just matched the grading. Well, my hips are probably a little bit bigger than the grade, so I should have added a little bit more width to my hip. It works, it moves around, but it does kind of cling to my tummy a little bit more than I would prefer, but I still love this dress. On the back side, I have used an invisible zipper, and at the top I overlapped the collar and I stitched just some snaps, so it makes it really easy to do up. And then I don't know if I do hook and eyes wrong, but let me know in the comments. I always find that when I wear my hair down, it always gets caught on the hook and eye, and so I don't know, maybe I'm doing something wrong, but that's why I use snaps, because I knew this collar was going to be super high and I didn't want my hair getting caught in the hook and eye. And then this tie, I did not follow the pattern because at this point, I mean, I had to cut each piece like 2 times and I was kind of getting burnt out, which is another reason why I did not do a walkthrough. I was kind of losing it a little bit. So this is just 2-inch wide strip, the full length, the 54 inches. And this, I mean, this wasn't a difficult sew. It was just a lot because all of these underlying pieces for the bodice, I had to baste together before I sew. And then I also had to baste this seam together to put the zipper in, but they are still loose. And then at the bottom, this was not something that was called out in the pattern. The pattern actually has a kind of a plain front. I added some gathered lace just between the bottom tier and the main skirt. And it is a little bit more gathered than the bib portion, but this was all of the lace I had left and I figured I might as well use it. And so I just gathered it. And I think it adds just that little bit of extra because it was kind of, I mean, I would say it was looking kind of plain, but there's still a lot going on, but it was looking kind of plain from the waistline down, and I love that little extra detail. I don't know where I'm going to wear this dress. I have worn it to Zoom work calls. I wore it one day when I just needed a little bit of a pick-me-up, and my coworkers called it an Amish dress. To me, like, it kind of reminds me of those nightgowns that your grandmother would make you wear Christmas morning, you know, with the bib and the lace. My husband thinks it's a little ridiculous, and my daughter says it looks old. So that just means that I've got vintage down to a T. And my mom does say it looks exactly like bridesmaids' dresses from the 1970s. So this is following the pattern McCall's 4249, but I did also kind of look through the Gunne Sax online to try to find fabric that kind of mirrored the designs. And I had this in the stash, and I will insert a picture of a Gunne Sax I did find on Pinterest that has a very similar fabric. But overall, I think this works. It is polyester, so I probably wouldn't want to wear it on a hot day. I did underline it with cotton, so it's a little bit, it's not very heavy, but overall, I really like this. I will not get as much wear out of this as I will for my sundresses, just because the sundresses are super comfortable and breathable, and I can dress this down, dress this up. And this is like, even if I wanted to and wore it with a sun hat and sandals, it would still look pretty fancy. The majority of the folks that follow me have discovered me from my Gunne Sax inspired dresses, so I'm sure most of you love this. But if you think there was something different that I should have done to maybe make it more Gunne Sax, or maybe something that I could have tweaked it to make it a little bit more palatable for present day, let me know. I do have a whole bunch more of this chiffon, not in this print, but similar, so I could recreate this if I wanted to, but I think one of these in my closet is enough. I just can't stop looking at it. Well, I hope you enjoyed the walkthrough of all of the pattern alterations and the grading techniques I used to create this dress. I do have some official Gunne Sax dresses that I will have to grade up and do an FBA on, but they're a lot less complex and they're more of a sundress style. I also have another black label Gunne Sax that I will be doing episode 2 of Vintage Investigations. So if there's anything that you would like me to address in future Vintage Investigations or sew-alongs, let me know in the comments and I will try to incorporate them in the future videos. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe. Let me know what you want to see, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye.